Okay, and welcome to my very first Let's Play that I've ever done. You're going to have to pardon me for not knowing what I'm doing. I just installed some new software and giving this a shot, because I tend to watch a lot of Let's Plays at any given time. I've been a big fan of Game Grumps, and like to watch Lilia Love Games, Markiplier, all those typical ones out there. So there are a couple Let's Plays of this game I saw online, and they were a lot of fun. One guy, Hunky something or other, I can't remember his names because I absolutely suck with names, but he did this entire thing in a pirate voice, and I can't say that I'm as talented as that, but I figured that it would be worth giving this game a little bit more press on YouTube, whether or not people ever even see this, but hey, never know if you don't try. This is Sid Meier's Pirates. Came out in the mid-aughts, I guess, 2005. Super fun game. I've been playing it quite a bit lately just because I have no life, and I wanted to be able to share it with people. It's available on Steam. It's not too expensive. It's like $10 or something like that, and it's definitely worth your money in buying. So let's get started. It began with a celebration. Indebted for years to the Marquis de la Montauban, a family's prosperity was soon to be restored. Their fleet was due to arrive on the morrow, carrying both their hopes and their salvations. But the celebration was befouled by an unwelcome guest. The Marquis himself had arrived, bearing ill tidings. The fleet had been lost, and the debt had come due. The family's property was seized, and they were pressed into bondage. I can talk. But one of them would not be a slave. And so it was that the brave young scion escaped his family's fate, swearing to save them, and one day avenge the Marquis' foul deed. Now grown to his full measure, the young adventurer began his quest to find his family and restore their fortune. Seeking passage to the New World, you inquire in a public house. That's interesting how they change it from third to first person narrative. If you be looking for the passage, yada 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 yada. Okay, so with this game, you pick a name. I already plug in what I always use because I use that for everything, and that's very creative. A bunch of different options that you can do for difficulty. If you start on Apprentice, which if you haven't played this before, it's worth doing. It defaults you on a certain time period, which is quote-unquote the easiest. Whether or not that's true, it probably is. As you go along with the different difficulties, I haven't really noticed a huge difference once you get Journeyman through Rogue. I like to start on Adventure because the way I play, I like to go and take over a bunch of cities early on, and starting on Adventure just means that there's a little bit less troops in the cities, which is a little bit easier to take over when you're just starting off, because it's hard to get crew early on. And the higher difficulties you have, the less crew sign on when you try to recruit them. Then after a little bit, I'll play the rest of the game as Rogue. Swashbuckler is... I read something online, someone said that it was hard just to be... for the reason of being hard, which is true. I just don't find any enjoyment out of it. The fencing is a little bit ridiculous, and my 36-year-old reflexes, I guess, aren't really up to par. So I'm going to start on Adventure. You can have different skills that help you throughout the game. I think a lot of people would start off with fencing, as especially if you're just getting to know the game, it'll kind of give you a little bit of an edge. It gives you a little bit of a general boost against the opponents. Skill of gunnery improves your aim during ship battles, which I've never even bothered doing. There's modifications for your ship that let you do that, and honestly, aiming is not very hard. Navigation, I would say that this would be more helpful if you want to sail around in a big ship. This game has winds. You're in the Caribbean, or Caribbean, however you want to pronounce it, and the winds generally come from the east. So when you're trying to sail east, it can be very slow if you're using certain types of ships. So I guess that might be a selection to use to speed things up. Or you could just do the trick that I will show you later, which kind of completely negates that. Skill at medicine is the one I'm going to be using. It adds about 5 years to your health. And the way I play this kind of starts off a little bit slow before I actually get into the main quest of the game. I do things in order to just kind of make things a little bit simpler, which I'll get into explaining a little bit later. Not simpler, I think streamlined is a better way of putting it. And wit and charm for wooing those lovely governor's daughters. It's really not that hard to do that, and I don't know why anyone would pick that. There are different time periods you can start off on. The earlier you go, I would say, the harder it is. It goes hard, easy, and then hard again. For now, with the way that I'm playing, I'm going to be going to Buccaneer Heroes, which is quote-unquote the easier setting, but the defenses of the towns are a little bit weaker. And since primarily what I'm going to be doing at the beginning is taking over towns left and right, it just makes that a lot faster without having to bring on a huge amount of crew and them getting all pissed off at me for not bringing enough money, and you'll see that as it goes on a little bit. The earlier the dates, the less cities there are, and pretty much all the cities are Spanish, and that can be good or bad, but honestly, playing as Spain is the hardest way to do if you want to stick with being loyal to your countrymen, which I don't do. So if you're playing this, try around with the different time periods. I don't really find 1600 to be very fun. There's just not enough cities, and you just spend most of your time sailing. War for Profit is a good era, and if you start off as a Spanish in 1640, you get, I would arguably, the best ship in the game to start with. It's a mail runner, which is very fast, but it can hold quite a bit of crew and be generally useful. You can play the entire game with your starter ship if you do that once you put some modifications on it. Anywho, we're going to start with the Buccaneer Heroes on Adventure difficulty, and I need to select Skill at Medicine and not leave it on Wit and Charm. Continue! So at this point, you have to pick a country to start with. There's France, Spain, the Dutch, and English. I would say the easiest ones to start with would be the English and the French, because they have a decent spread across the Caribbean. French probably have better locations overall. The English locations spread across are a little bit higher, with the exception of Port Royal, which is a very good location. Dutch are considered the hardest to start with, but you don't really... I would say they're good to go with if you don't plan on being loyal to anybody and just spread around and cause mayhem. And then there's the Spanish. Spanish control most of the Caribbean, as you'll see once we get to the map. Their cities are everywhere. They're the ones with all the money. They're the ones with all the ships. And if you play staying loyal to the Spanish, it's going to be kind of a slow, dull game, because you're not going to be able to take over a bunch of ships and towns, and you're not going to make a whole lot of money. However, I am starting as Spanish with the hopes that it will start us off over in the Mexico area. If not, I'm not going to restart, but I'll have to get over there quickly. So we're going to go with the Spanish. We sail with the tide. crossing was fraught with terror and cruelty. The captain drove the ship and her crew to breaking. Don't take my necklace. Ow. It's a bitch slap. Pushed beyond all decency, the crew mutinies. Not sure what he's trying to get at shooting a cannon at his ship, but hey. Ruh-roh. His funky eyes. In the face. And that is you, the dashing main character. Free and under full sail, the ship and its crew are at your command. You make your way into the Caribbean, or Caribbean. I never know which way to pronounce that, so I'm probably going to go back and forth throughout this playthrough. A fortune to be had. A family to rescue. Revenge to be served. Aww. So those are the 4 family members that you have to rescue. You technically don't have to do anything in this game, but the goal is to get as many fame points as possible. So right now I'm starting off with statistics of nothing. You build up your wealth as you go along. You get more money when you divide the plunder, which I'll explain when we get to that point. As you make the various nationalities happier, they give you more and more and more and more land, which you usually wind up at when you're done with 10 to 20,000 acres of land spread across the Caribbean. Don't know what you're going to wind up doing with it. Each nationality gives you a rank, and there's perks with their ranks. So it starts off with captain and goes all the way up to duke. Once you're a duke, pretty much everything you do is super easy and cheap with them. And the other various ranks, they make things less expensive, like less expensive repairs on your ships. Then they also make it easier to recruit in their ports. So right now I have no rank with anybody. And I will be boosting that as quick as I can. Pirates defeated. There are 9 named pirates in this game, like Henry Morgan, Jack Rackham, stuff like that. If you've watched Black Sails, you're going to recognize a lot of the names. Or I just also started playing Assassin's Creed 4, and Steed Bonnet is in here. The instruction manual for this game is pretty thorough too, and it gives you a little bit of history on the people. And some of those pirates really weren't very piratical. They didn't really do a whole lot. Then each pirate has their own treasure, and you sail around, you get map pieces for the treasure. So the easier difficulty you're on, the more map pieces you get. So if you're running on the apprentice level, you get an entire map at once. Once you get to adventure and higher, you have to collect 4 different pieces, and that's kind of the general theme throughout things. So when you have to find your family members, you can see there's 16. You get 16 total map pieces, 4 for each one. Now, generally, the maps, you don't need to have the whole map in order to find things. You can usually kind of pull ahead, and if you can see the right quest markers, and you can usually get to it pretty easily. Villains Avenged, that's just going to be the Marquis de Montalban. You have to do several steps with him. First, you have to collect 4 map pieces from him, surprisingly enough. And then you have to find his hideout. When you go to his hideout, you have to bring a ton of crew, usually at least 400 crewmen. And you search for his hideout, then you invade it. Then you have to do essentially a city invasion, which you'll see me doing a whole lot of. And then you have to have a sword fight with him. And he is a giant pain in the ass with the sword fights. That's pretty much primarily the reason I don't play on Swashbuckler, because I suck at sword fighting in this game. There's a bunch of defensive moves that you can do, but the entire time I've played this since it came out in '05, I've only ever done full-on offensive fencing, so I've pretty much trained myself out of being able to do any of the defensive moves. So on the super hard level, I just can't do it, and it's just not worth it. Oh yeah, romance. I skipped over that. And Lost Cities. Romance, you get to woo governor's daughters. This game is very sexist. I apologize in advance to my female watchers that may be watching this, but I guess it kind of is what it is. The governor's daughters come in three different types. There's rather plain, there's attractive, and there's beautiful. And the beautiful ones are the ones that you really want to go after. You get more fame points for going after them, and you just get better things from them. Depending on the attractiveness, the rather plain give you simpler rewards. They'll give you just quests after you get a bunch of free items, which is nice. But then after that, you get quests to do bounties for where you sail around. You go to a city, go into a tavern, and you get between 2,000 and 5,000 gold for beating up some poor schmuck that's apparently a criminal for some reason. The attractive ones tend to lead more towards helping you find the people that know where your family members are. And the beautiful ones do all of that, plus they give you map pieces to find the lost cities. And they start up your ability to find the Marquis de Montauban, which for some reason, I don't really know if there's any other way of getting that to start up without getting that from a beautiful daughter. The Lost Cities quests are something that comes a little bit later in the game. There's Aztec, Incan, Mayan, and Olmec ruins that when you search for them, you get maps like you do with the treasures. Though these are a lot more difficult to find, especially in the higher difficulties. Sometimes they're pretty much unfindable. Is that a word, unfindable? Yeah, whatever, I don't care. But those lost cities give you 50,000 gold, which is pretty nice. So, let's see what else do we have here. Just going to go over our menu screen here really quick so you know what we're looking at. This is the list of ships. You start off with just the basic ship with basic crew, basic stats. It's not that great. You want to upgrade as quickly as possible. Then specialists, there are 8 different crew officers that give you different perks. There's like a cook makes your crew happier. Gunner's my favorite one because it makes you be able to fire your cannons at twice the rate of speed of before. Status, this kind of just gives you what's going on. This is a good way of finding out what your health is. Health is important. Your character does age, and so you'll go from excellent, fine, good, fair, and poor. And as you get older, you start slowing down. So fencing becomes more difficult. Dancing becomes more difficult. It's harder to keep crew happy and harder to recruit more crew. So that's why I picked the skill at medicine, because you can last a lot longer. Every time you get hit in battle when you're fencing, it doesn't show you any tracker for it, but it does affect your health in the end. So that's why I pretty much just fence in full offensive and don't even bother trying to learn the defensive. I can't talk. The defensive abilities, because I just sit there and get hit and lose all the battles all the time because I suck. Captain's Log, this will tell you who is at war and at peace with who, and then you'll get various notes and stuff from people you talk to. This stuff is important. It has the different flags, so Spanish and English, Spanish and the Dutch. So Spanish, they're always all their ships are gonna be yellow. The English are always gonna be red. The Dutch are gonna be orange, and the French are going to be blue, so it's easy to just tell it at a glance. When people are at war, if you attack the other faction, they're happy with you. If they're at peace, if you attack either of these factions, you lose credibility with both of them. So that's kind of a pain in the ass when that happens. You generally don't want people at peace. Occasionally, the governors will ask you to escort a peace agreement to another city with another nationality. It's generally a good idea to sink that ship. Yeah, it's going to hurt your standing a little bit with that governor or that nationality, but you don't want people at peace. It doesn't benefit you at all. Though the peace treaty ships are generally the mail runners, which, as I said, are one of the best ships in the game. So, hey, bonus there. Treasure map. As I said, you can find treasures for the various named captains, and nothing yet. This is your world map. It's starting us in St. Augustine, which kind of sucks. We need to get down here. The reason I'm doing this is actually a city I plan on taking over, but when you're hunting the Marquis de Montauban and Baron Raimundo, the Baron is the guy that knows where all your family members are. When you're hunting them, they travel all over the Caribbean, and you have to go pretty much chase them until you finally catch up with them. And when they're over here, it's a pain in the ass, especially if you're in a big ship like I talked about before, where you're trying to sail east. It could take you, in game time, over a year to go, say, from Veracruz to St. Kitts. And that's annoying. And your crew gets unhappy with you, your character ages. So what I do is I start off, I just take over all these cities for the, I usually do one for each of the different nationalities, unless someone's at peace. I'm not going to take one over that someone's at peace with, because it's just going to hurt my credibility. So you'll take over, say, like, France and the Dutch are allied right now, so say this is a Dutch city. If I took it over for France, France would actually be mad at me for giving them this city, even though I just gave them a free city, because they're allied with the Dutch. Now they're Spanish, so that's not an issue. So what I generally do is I take out these three, and then I sail up to Havana. Havana is pretty much the major Spanish port in the game. It looks like they even have a bigger flag to identify it as that. When you take over these cities, it's going to piss off the Spanish something fierce. They're going to start sending invasion forces over and over and over and over again. So you have to take out the invasion forces as you get up to Havana, then you have to wipe out Havana. In order to take out cities, I'll show you as we go along, but you can hire, you can tell pirates and Indians, and Native Americans, they're called Indians in this game, to attack different towns, which will kind of soften them up for you so you can go in and take them out. It's hard to ever keep more than 300 some crew without them getting mad and wanting to mutiny on you right away. So the less troops in a city, the better for you. And so let's see, we're in St. Augustine. This is usually the fifth city I take over. It's going to wind up being the last because I don't want to build up too much crew here. That's one nice thing about having these cities here, is you can build up quite a bit of crew. Okay, so other different little things on here to look at. Load and save, obvious what that does. Not sure what this is. I'm sure they'll show up later. Top 10 pirates. These are the ones I talked about. They're in order from the most difficult to the easiest, and you work your rank up as you do more things, such as get money, kill ships, take over towns, get promotions, find treasures, and get unique items, which I'll show you later as we go along. You can start attacking them right away. I like to wait a couple years before I start going after them so they can build up a little bit more money. Henry Morgan, especially if you wait, maybe 10 years or so, he will give you an absolute shitload of money. So that's pretty much just up to you. It's a good way to also gain reputation with the various nations, because they really like it when you take out one of these captains. So there is a bug in this game, which is really annoying. It's only happened to me once, but the captains can get sunk by NPC ships, and it makes it so you can't find them, and you will never get any credit for killing them, so you can't get the absolute highest score in the game. That kind of blows. It happened to me with, I think it was Bart Roberts, where they told me where to find him, but then they said that he carries 0 doubloons, and I sailed all over the place, and he just simply was not there. So, and then Piratepedia, this is kind of fun to just look through if you want to know various words. They teach you what aft means, or if you want to look up what different ships do. Where's a ship? Let's find a sloop. It'll give you the stats on that. Sloop. Here we go. So it gives you stats on the ships, so you kind of know what they do. This one turns tight and it's fast. Usually the smaller ships tend to be faster, but they're also more fragile. But as you get better at the game, and especially when you get cotton sails and copper plating for your ship, so you're more maneuverable, I would say most people tend to find that running a smaller ship is better because you can pretty much go through without getting any of your crew killed in naval battles, and you can sail loops around the different enemies. I usually try to get one of these as quick as I can. You'll never get one as you start, but if you start pissing off the Spanish fast enough, they'll start sending them after you as pirate hunters. When you get one of these, you'll probably wind up using that for the rest of the game. A lot of people do. Some people like bigger ships. That's just my preference there. So let's get to it. So we are in St. Augustine. You have several different options when you get to town. We're going to talk to the governor first. So here they tell you who they're at war with or who they're at peace with. The Spanish are pretty much always at war with somebody. Right now it's the English and the Dutch. And a letter of marque is a document that allows you to become a legal privateer to be able to sink the enemies of the ships of the country that you get it from. So that's a historical thing. If you've watched any pirate things, you'll probably see that on there. The third Pirates of the Caribbean movie, Captain Barbarossa gets one from the British. And he tells you to go to the nearest enemy city and start killing them, which you can do. I don't want to piss off the English yet. I'm just going to be making the Spanish hate me, even though I signed on as Spanish. And they tell you where it is. And they send a ship so you can kind of watch what to do. Or you can even kill that ship if you wanted to. I'm not going to piss off the Spanish until I get down into those 3 cities in Mexico, because I need to be able to recruit from their taverns. So I usually get a couple of promotions from the Spanish first and then go from there. The tavern, you get this dude in the back that he'll sell you things or give you information. He's a good way to get items that you can't get from the governor's daughters. The poorer the town you're in, the cheaper items are going to be. Just kind of keep that in mind. If you go to a rich city like Havana and say you want to buy the dancing shoes, if they pop up, he'll try to sell them. If he's there, it'll be like 9,000 gold. But if you go to a pirate haven, you can probably find them for 2,000. So something to keep in mind. Here's where you recruit crew. I'm not going to bring on anybody. No, I'll take them on. So my starter ship holds 75 crew. The barmaid tells you about ships that are carrying money. She'll tell you if there's modifications to various baddie ships that go on. She'll tell you right now where a certain named pirate is. So she says where Captain Kidd is, and is carrying over 6,300 gold doubloons. If I wait a couple years, that's going to go up to probably 20,000. So I don't really have any reason to take that right now. But he is nearby. And the bartender will tell you all kinds of things. Usually he'll tell you where the beautiful governor's daughters are. And in this case, he's telling me where I can get upgrades for my ship. So you can't get upgrades for your ship all in one port. Each port has different upgrades available at them. Keep in mind that the pirate havens and the small villages of the different nationalities have them as well. He won't tell you about those, but it's sometimes worth checking in on those in order, if you're trying to find something, you don't want to sail across the world in order to get cotton sails, for instance. And he will also tell you where the big baddies are. The Marquis de Montalban, Baron Raimundo, and Colonel Mendez, I think it is, or Mendoza, who kidnaps the governor's daughters later on in the game. So the merchant, this is where you buy things, obviously. One way to play this game, it's kind of a sandbox game, so you could actually play it peacefully if you wanted to. I don't know why that'd be boring, but you can buy, every city sells these commodities at different prices. So say I bought sugar for 4 gold here, I could go to, I think, Caraco or Curacao, or I don't know how you pronounce it. I think they buy it for, say, 12 gold each, so you can make a little bit of profit doing that. But I usually just you can, if you attack merchant ships, you'll get some, and I'll usually hold on to it until I see a better number for it. Spice and luxuries tend to go for the highest. If you go to Barbados, spice is generally over 50 gold each, so it is a way to make a little bit of quick money, but going out of your way to act as a merchant can be pretty boring. So, consult the ship rate. This is where you can repair your ship and get upgrades. Right now I have no money, and so he could upgrade me with chain shot, which I already have. Chain shot is ammo to use to take out the enemy's sails, and grape shot takes out their crew. So what you'll generally do is try to get in close as possible and hit the enemy ship with a little bit of grape shot first to knock down their crew to make taking the ship a little bit easier. When you're first starting off, it's generally a good idea to not attack the ships too much and just rush in and fence, because repairs on ships are really expensive early on in the game until you start getting promotions to cut those down. Once you get to the 6th rank, which is Count, I believe, ship repairs are free, so then you can just take things out as much as you want. It's also generally not a good idea to sink ships. It doesn't really give you any benefit more than it would be to take it over. When you take it over, then you can get all the loot on it, you can get some crew out of it, you can get specialty crew off of it. If you sink it, you get absolutely nothing unless you sail over as it's sinking. You can pick up a little bit of crew from it, so which you'll probably see me do occasionally. So we are going to sail away. This is episode 1. And I appreciate you joining me. Next episode, we're going to make our way down to Campeche, and we'll see where we can go from there. Thanks for joining me. Bye.